that I had a teacher that taught me anyways, and taught me differently. I wish that wasn't something that had to be brought up all the time, because I don't think like Sheryl Crow is talking about her first teacher all the time, right? But it's still an issue, and I think in the world we live in right now, that should be part of the dialogue. But then there's so many other things, and the thing I kind of force the dialogue to go to in interviews, for example, is accessibility and the arts. And like the reason we don't think there are disabled artists out there is because it's like 20 times harder to tour right now. It's really not easy. And I'm not saying like it's impossible, because it's certainly not. I know other artists with disabilities that do it, but a lot of venues are off limits because they're not accessible. A lot of hotels are not feasible. A lot of like travel accommodations just don't work or are harder to get. Cabs, airplanes, all these things. So it's like not as easy to tour if you have a disability. But that's changeable, right? Like that's something we can fix. Most problems we think of when we talk about disability are man-made. And then things like chronic illness, which or mental illness or any of those things that are not like outside are, to me, I like to think of disability as a form of diversity. So like in the same way that I wouldn't be like, that poor guy was born black. Like what? Like in 2018 you wouldn't say that, but for some reason we can still say that about disability. And I think if you reframe disability entirely to be about a bodily, like a different form of human diversity, it takes away a lot of that negative language and stigma that we use. And that is what I would like my musical discussion to be based around. I really do think it's important to have people with disabilities in the media. Again, like eventually I hope that's not something I have to like keep trying to like work on or promote, like let's get disabled artists out in the scene, because it already will be, but like right now I think things are changing, but they're changing slower because there's not very much representation. And so the more representation we get, the faster we're gonna get to like a more just society. I think that's part of the equation. It's not the only piece of the puzzle, but it's one pretty significant piece, I think. Just having people like realize that people with disabilities have issues that are, people don't know. I do a lot of public speaking, and I'll be like, did you know I lost like my SSI and I almost lost my healthcare when we got married? And people are appalled, but they have no idea. And it's been like that forever. So we're just like not aware of the situations. And I guess in terms of long range, so I feel like disability rights advocates, and this is me, so like I'm not speaking for anyone else, but for me, I feel like the disability rights advocates that I know in America, which is not a worldwide thing, because there's a lot of different issues facing people with disabilities in other countries. America's actually pretty far ahead in the game, ironically, even though it feels like we're not. I've been around and talked to people who have been to even more underdeveloped places where it's like attitudes, access are all way far behind where we are now. So in America, I feel like the activists I know are almost like living in a future world in their minds, where they've already accepted their body as just different, and it's just a different body. Like that is literally what we're talking about, and it has different needs, so we have to make society accessible. And all the negative baggage that you hear in the media, or in music, or in film, or like, all that stuff is like outdated, right? But unfortunately it's still being created right now. So like I feel like I'm living like 30 years in the future in my brain. And then like whenever I see something like that come out and it wins an Oscar or whatever, I just like part of my brain explodes basically, because I'm like, how are we still, but it's because people in power are not do not have this, like those films wouldn't exist if disability rights advocates had more say in the media. You know what I'm saying? So I think we've reached a tipping point in the disability community where I think for many people on the front lines, shame is not as much an issue as one would think, or like disdain or like hating their bodies. It's more about like society is really far behind, and how do we catch people up? But I think most able-bodied people don't realize that shift has happened. So when they talk to me, they talk about my disability in a way that they assume I think it's negative. And so then the first part of the conversation always has to be like, look, I don't think it's negative. Like, so let's clear that up right away and then move to something else, right? And it was kind of rambly, but like, I think there's a lot behind that, and I think I'm only speaking for myself, but I've met enough people around the country now with disabilities, and we've had some pretty cool conversations where I do feel like if we can shift away from the negative language and the negative mindset about disability, which I think has happened internally for a lot of people, and just really insist that society follows our lead, things will change faster, I think, and become more positive. And art is a great place to do that, like a really good place to do that, because it's not confrontational. I'm not swearing at you. I mean, unless I'm make my album with a bunch of swears on it, but so far I haven't done that, you know what I mean? We're not yelling at each other. I'm just like making art, and I can say something in a way that you can just take in passively and think about. And I think that's why art is such a great medium for social change. So the more artists with disabilities who hold the view of like society just needs to be there, like that's the biggest barrier, right? The more artists that hold that view and make art from that place, the more I think that will seep in and it'll create conversations, and hopefully we'll move forward. Is that relate to people?
Yes.
On that side of the room? Okay, sweet. Okay, cool. Okay, that's my answer. Sweet. Yeah.
So to that point, in what ways might you encourage that both of you can answer this actually, in what ways might you encourage that the visual and performing arts help people deal with like mental, emotional, internal discord?
Well, okay, so say that one more time so I make sure I understand.
In what ways might you encourage that the visual and performing arts help people deal with emotional discord, mental illness of any kind, any disabilities, just any internal discord that they may be dealing with? Both of you talked about being sacrifices and about being present. Like I loved your quote about your upbeat, own that, and you talked about being present in the sacrifices that you made. But I know that takes a toll on your mental space, right? So I'm thinking about, but you both are artists, you both are still creating in spite of. So in what ways might you encourage, say, other artists, how does it help us deal with
Well, I guess if you're like an arts organization, are you talking from an arts organization or from an individual perspective?
from an individual?
Okay. Well, maybe you have, I guess I was thinking the idea of, for me, I think the biggest barrier isn't necessarily from within, because I can say I know that I can only do this much, and I can do that, but if I don't have a space to perform, right, or like for example, I just met a lady 2 days ago who was going to try out for an opera. She wanted to be in an opera. She has chronic illness. She uses a walker. And they basically told her like she couldn't try out unless she could stand through the whole 90 minutes. Like why, right? Like if you're offbeat, own it. Also, if you're freaking in a theater, it's a black room, and everybody's pretending to be somewhere else anyways. Can't they like somehow find a mental way to jive with the fact that somebody might be sitting for part of it, And so I think for me, knowing your own limits is really important and being true to yourself. But then so much of it actually comes down to like the arts organization being open to, like it has to be from both. Because I will burn out probably eventually unless I get, like there's a reason that I don't play it in accessible venues because it's so incredibly stressful. So like you're not like a superhuman. You have to do what you can do. And so for me, I think organizational and like understanding that someone doesn't have to look or do something a very particular way, and being open, like as an arts organization, for example, are you advertising your classes or your dance to places where people with disabilities like will see them, because then they will come if they know they're welcome and it's an accessible space, and then they can kind of figure out their own barriers and boundaries and like what they need mentally. And I think just being compassionate with each other, you know, like I think that's a big part of it too. Like, what can a guy handle or a girl handle? It's sort of up for them to say and then for us to respect, right? So that might be kind of roundabout, but I do think there's a really big component. It's not all going to be inner willpower, you know? Like, society has to be on board too with like helping to make a space where if you have mental illness, you can still be involved in a freaking art program. Like, if you're autistic, you can still come when you can come and then leave if you need to leave, and that doesn't mean you get kicked out. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of it has to do with how arts organizations are set up, kind of like make people fail at it, and then what are they going to do, right? So I think it's like a twofold answer. Maybe you have more about the internal, because for me, like, I love music, so it wasn't a thing that I feel a lot of anxiety, but I know music helps me with it. I mean, dude, sometimes when I'm playing, I'm like, I think I might be having a heart attack. Well, maybe not. I'll just see by the end of the song. Like, I have a lot of anxious thoughts, but I know music overall benefits me, so it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, you know, that's who I am, but I know that. But the things that are hard for me with music usually is my own internal stuff I can deal with. It's the external that's harder. So what about the internal for you? Like, what do you recommend people, you know?
No, that's interesting because the external is easy for me. Like, I can almost put on the character. It's like, oh yeah, this is easy. You know, nothing phases me. But inside, I think I deal with more than the average Joe. You know, I have a lot on my mind. You know, just speaking about that. You know, being a black man. You know what I mean? Just simply, you know, you're born with stress. You know, from your parents. You know, so it's like you already have that stress from you, along with the stress you have growing up. You know, so I think there's definitely music is definitely a vessel for me. You know, and all art is a vessel for me to understand how I navigate through the world. You know what I mean? Like it literally is my map, and it is it's my compass, and it really helps me understand what I need to do to survive and live. You know, and I don't know, like, you know, just writing, let alone just writing. And sometimes dancing, you answer your own questions. You ask yourself questions and you're answering questions. That is art, you know. I think that's art. You know, you ask yourself questions and you answer those questions. Or somebody asks you a question and you answer it, you know. And I think that's you know, simply, I don't really know how to answer this question, but that's it. Oh, beautiful. All right, yeah, beautiful. Definitely.
And we're already last few questions, or do you have more questions, Ben? What are your thoughts?
You all were a beautiful audience.
Oh, yeah, that's very true.
I love you.
That's my imaginary beard. I do that a lot. I know about that, though.
When the night has come.
So definitely everybody check out all of Gaelynn's beautiful merch outside. And Kingsley will be performing at the Philly Music Fest on September 29th, the World Cafe Live. And come out to Vox Populi check out my exhibition, and next event that will be at Vox Populi is Jay Soliday and Lure are performing on the 22nd. And then on October 6th is Kimia Amani Jackson, who is in the audience, who will be doing a guided meditation, shaking dance workshop within my exhibition. So lots of fun things happening. Thank you so much to Matt and to Moore, and everybody get home safely.